All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. Got my guy Alex Blickle here with me as always. Going to break down all things for the CJ Cup. Byron Nelson coming off a big major week, the second major of the year. I know a lot of members in the Ship It Nation community had some success. Love to see that. I know our big guy in the sky, we're remembering him this week. So thank you to everybody that's reached out thinking about James. We've got some news coming on the big guy event soon for the entire DFS community, but just want to say thank you to everyone that reached out there as Aaron Pumpernickel Rye and Two Gloves got the job done, which is awesome to see. It's the epitome of hard work. And like the Xander quote was phenomenal. We'll do a bit of a recap there, but I was fortunate enough to get my second Fantasy Golf World Championship seat. So excited about that. But Alex, let's bring you in, my friend. Excited to be back with you, breaking down another tournament, which could be a lazy week. And we'll talk about some of that stuff. We've got some other good topics to cover as well. But how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing well. Really excited for this show. I think, sometimes coming off a major, it's like, oh man, we gotta go do a show. It feels a little bit sluggish, but no, we've got some really kind of valuable discussion coming. And I think valuable, not just in the sense that like we think it's going to help everyone watching, but valuable in the sense that we think it's going to help each other just talk through it all. So very excited for that. And yeah, also just shout out to you, shout out to Pat, that show last week. We actually built that winning lineup on the show. So that was really cool to see. And it was funny listening to Pat talk about how like he played the same lineup. He didn't play in the same type of contest. So he made 500 when you made the $25,000 seat. That was just very entertaining.
Yeah, you got to commit to the thing, man. That's the thing. I know it's like sometimes the way it goes, but I also don't know who's going to enter what. Like when we record that stuff, that's a funny part of it too. Like sometimes people will have something I don't have. They're like, I heard this on the show. I'm like, really? I was on the freaking show pressing the buttons and I don't remember that. Or it'll be like, you guys said this, so I built that. At least that one makes more sense. I always usually prefer people are out there building it for themselves, obviously, but like we're just chatting through concepts and that's totally okay. So I think that's important to remember, but yeah, really fun major week. This show, just so you know, like you said, some good topics. We're going to talk about Alex, some transitioning from like a single entry to 3-entry max. We're going to talk about course fit for, some of the changes and how that might affect it. Weather coming in when we get to the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson. So we'll get to that. And then just a little bit of a recap, the big Scottie discussion this week with almost 15,000 and then a hard cutoff to 9,800 or 99, I guess, for Siwoo, I should say. A smaller 9K, smaller 8K, and then just sort of what you're going to do with that. But just talking about the major a little bit, I will say this. People think like the last thing I would care about is like X money coming in, by the way, from engagements. But I got to address the elephant in the room because like people think you're like rage baiting and you can't post anything. I could have changed one word. I said hate. I said, this is why the people hate the PGA Championship. And it was a flat leaderboard that came out. I know the bit. I've been in the game for a long time. People have been around forever saying like nice tournament and all that. What I was trying to say, and obviously when you just write a one-liner and you're on the fly of a major morning, people catch on to it. I was like, I did not expect this to happen. But first of all, I was talking about of the majors. Everybody knows it's like most people Masters, huge gap, so one of the Open or the US Open, and then a huge gap, and the PGA Championship. So people hate it compared to the other majors. I just didn't say compared. But second of all, it's not just to validate, it's just to point out. One thing I think, Alex, is there's never enough hype. And so what people don't get, it's not about those players and it's only Thursday. Like, no shit, the board's going to change by Sunday. And I certainly hope it does, by the way. I've got more money than most riding on this, and I want to see a good event. The Aaron Rye thing we'll talk about in a second was still awesome from my perspective. I think that's great to see in the sport. And when you are a big fan of it, I love it. But it wasn't even me. I said, people say this. You and I talked last week. You had me hyped for Aronimink and for the course and the event, but there's never hype to a PGA Championship like the Masters. You can't beat the Masters. It's obviously the first of the year. It's all the allure, like everything. I get that. The Open is, and someone tried to say, it's in the morning, people get up early. I mean, there's different time zones. I used to stay up late till like 2 a.m. on the West Coast or 3 a.m. and watch it then, and to each their own. My point being, there's hype to that. It's unique. It's different. It's overseas, old courses, all of that. And then the U.S. Open, I've said this a bunch of times. I'm Canadian. I love the U.S. Open. There's always something to it. The USGA, the course setup, the field, just how strong it is, the amateurs that qualify, people like yourself that are friends that are trying to qualify, things like there's just many angles to it. So in my opinion, what I was trying to say, the worst thing, and what people always complain about the PGA Championship being the worst, is if it comes out flat, or I would have said the same thing, to be honest, if it came out with Scottie up by 4 early. It's like if you already don't love an event or a major, it has no juice, and then you get a flat start after you've been building this thing up, or you get a runaway early, it's almost like the worst case scenario, in my opinion, because then it becomes, and you've had comments on this in the past, like an NBA situation where it's like, all right, we'll tune into the fourth quarter. Look at the NBA games. Been phenomenal these last couple of nights. The Spurs OKC series opening up like that. Last night's game with the comeback for the Knicks. But it's like for the average person, they kind of just got to tune in at the end and see what happens. Like tune in for the OT, tune in for the double OT, Spurs win. For us, it's different, but that's what I was trying to portray and bring up. I don't know if you have any added thoughts, but just wanted to put that out there first off, because I love all majors and I love all golf, but I know why people complain about the PGA Championship. It seems clear.
Well, when you first tweeted that, I thought it was just being sarcastic, like you were making fun of the people who would actually say that in that moment about it, and then it went absolutely crazy. So it's always entertaining. I even said the other day, like I had 2 tweets last week, not to the level that yours did, but they kind of went viral on both of them. It's like, why is this catching on? I don't understand how Twitter functions.
That explanation,
how the Twitter mob.
So I get why people took it as like rage bait or something like that. And I, responding to people, I was like, if there's no juice, my point was, if there's no juice to a leaderboard to a major that already has no hype, it sucks for the average person. We're all going to be tuned in. We got more money in round 1 or round 2 or whatever than most people are putting on anything for golf. So that's why we're tuned in. But I'm saying we also love golf. That's the real reason why we're tuned in. It's a major. And by the way, to move, segue it, the Aaron Rai stuff is phenomenal. I said there hasn't, if only Billy Horschel was there to hype him up like the year he won at the Wyndham. But I just thought that story that Xander told, and I saw you reposted it, so I know you saw it. That is like, the epitome of my sign. The thing I always talk about is it's all the work people are doing when you don't see them out in public. Like Xander, the story was him and I think his caddy's name's Austin. I always mix it up. But I think it's like me and Austin went out after a workout or like after a putting session late to go like get a workout in just to see, like no one's going to be in there, right? Like it would be fun. Get a putting session in late, go to the gym. And sure enough, Aaron Rai's the only guy in there working out. And it's just all the stuff. But Aaron Rai's not showing off for anybody. He just knows in order to be the top of the game and to have these opportunities to put yourself in those positions to be able to pay them off, you got to be putting in the work. And everyone says, all these golfers do that. I get it. But it's like Xander said it in a way of someone who's a 2-time major winner, top of his game at times and falling off a little right now, falling off, you know what I mean? Like versus what he was. It's hard to win majors, by the way, but just noting it, it was incredible to see him be like, everybody says we all work hard and like nobody works harder than me. But he's like, honestly, it really couldn't happen to a guy that, there's nobody that works harder really than what I've seen of this guy. And here's a real life example.
He's also such a nice guy that like legitimate conversation is he so nice that it actually hurts his chances of winning golf tournaments, which is, I think is kind of silly. And actually like it was interesting for me on Sunday evening to just go back and kind of look at my stuff and see like, okay, what would it have taken for me to land on Aaron Rai today? Cause I didn't have him in my 3 showdown lineups. And honestly, like it was the simplest answer of all time. All I had to do was look at the contention performance score that I created. He was the only guy at 4 under or better with a positive contention performance score, and I didn't play him. So it would have been a very, very easy way for me to land on him. And I did lean into that metric. I had a bunch of like really good contention performance scores from guys around 2 under, 3 under. But if there was only one guy at 4 under or better with a positive one. And so it would have been a really simple path to get there. So I was a little bit upset with myself for that. But the other thing I want to say about Rai, just to give people some extra context, like the logo that he has on his shirt and his hat, it's a dominant logo. Like it's a type of logo placement on his clothing that you get paid a lot of money for. And he wears it for free because it's the guys that, teach him. And I think that's just really, really cool. Even when he could be making a ton of money off of that, he still just decides to say, no, I'm just going to help the guys who helped me get here. Just it really is cool when you hear about someone like being such a nice guy and such a kind person. It's nice to actually like see that in action, and hearing those stories have been really fun. So, as someone who wasn't rooting for Rai during the day, afterwards was like, okay, you know what? I really can find some joy in the fact that he won, because it is one of the better golf stories.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I love stuff like that. And we'll see. Who knows if he gets an arm patch now or something. Obviously, a little bit. I think when JJ Spawn won his major, Lab went out and sold their company for like 200x or something. And it was like, man, JJ Spawn get a cut of that? Because my goodness, that's incredible. But one of those things, right? But anyway, yeah, shout out to Aaron Rye. I think it's a good segue too there also to talk a little bit about if this, then that. And, some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, we're, about 10 minutes in, time to get to the Evergreen. The course played a lot different than I think a lot of people thought. And also those pin placements, man, I will say the post that I talked about earlier, there was some realism to that later on when people were getting pretty fed up of like, okay, are we really just going to watch these lag putts all day long because of these pin placements? And the guys, like some of those you just can't fire at, and no need to in a major, like make par, move on, make par, move on. And that is what ends up prevailing usually. And that's what allowed for Sunday to have that breakout. And when someone said to me the other day, I was working with somebody who said like, how'd you get to Rye? I mean, first of all, we were talking about him on the show last week. So it's like a subset of lineups. Also, I play a portfolio. You play single entry. You're going to talk a little bit about moving on from that and changing things up a little bit. I mean, I think that's extremely interesting, not just for me, but for others to hear from somebody playing at a high level, but just noting it. It's like you almost needed that, but also it's a from the clouds type of win. Like I posted, 2 days ago about James passing, and our guy Nick is in here right now. Shout out to LSU Nick, said RIP big guy, the editor, and the guy in the back can split a sub sandwich. I've been MIA with a lot of personal issues myself, but making my way back in. True 101 talking about James, but a 101 in his own right. Mr. LSU Nick there. I've been out with him a few different times and had him out when went to dinners and met him in Detroit and different places. So awesome dude. Thank you for the donation and just bringing that up. But everyone said like the win from the clouds, and it was like the big guy in the sky, and then making fun of Pumpernickel Rye and two gloves like everybody does. But he came out of nowhere. It could have been anyone on Sunday. There was so many options of who could have came out the winner, and that is what makes golf fun on a Sunday. But what people don't think about is like the lead up again is like that's a lot of pars on Friday, Saturday, on the the second day, the moving day, when you see how these pin placements are set up to get to this point. Saturday had some low scoring, mind you, but like that was definitely part of my thought as well. But what do you think about that and how it changed and how we can apply it to DFS moving forward?
Yeah, I the main thing that I want to kind of push back on from the public perception of the course is that I've heard so much like all it was hitting to 30 feet and trying to avoid three putts. And I think that's just a gross oversimplification of how these guys had to kind of attack the golf course and think their way around the golf course. And I thought that that's what the pin locations did, was just added a ton of course management. And a lot of players really kind of failed that test, including some really big names. Like I thought Oberg made some bogeys on both Saturday and Sunday, really, that he wouldn't have made if he had just made a smarter decision, either off the tee or with the approach shot, things of that nature. Justin Thomas was awful on Saturday with his course management. Then he was really good on Sunday, and we know how those 2 rounds went. So I felt like for example, like on number 7, the right rough, it's the dogleg right with the moguls and the kind of heavy fescue just right of the fairway. The right of 7, you were dead. Left of 7, on all 4 days, you were fine in that rough. Way too many players missed in the right rough. It was inexcusable to miss in the right rough. If any of them went to that tee box with the intent to make sure that any miss was left, they could have done that. It's not a difficult hole to make sure you miss left on, especially because a lot of the balls, understand, like they're rolling downhill through the fairway. So if you miss 40 yards left of your line off that tee, it's not like you're going to be blocked out by trees. You're just going to run into the rough quicker. The ball's going to stop. And you're going to hit the ball 40 yards shorter than you would have on a line to the right, but you're still going to end up with a shot into the green, and you're going to be able to stop it because the greens were somewhat receptive. So there were just way too many mental errors, I think, from some of the better players, that especially the ones that were in contention. I think pressure makes you make mental errors as well. And so it was just a very different test than we're used to seeing, right? We're used to seeing golf courses test these players from a purely physical standpoint. And I think the way this course was set up and just the course in general tested these guys more mentally than what we're accustomed to seeing. And quite frankly, a lot of them failed that mental test, especially once they were under that pressure. And I think Aaron Rye, to his credit, like, yeah, he got hot with the putter, but he also just answered that mental test, I think, a lot better than others did, including the fact that, he he was okay a few times saying, I'm going to be 60 yards behind these guys, but in doing so, I'm going to be able to hold the fairway while they automatically run through it into the rough, and then I'm going to be able to spin the ball. And so I thought, it's similar to the Tiger Woods formula, where Tiger's formula was basically no three putts and make aggressive swings to conservative targets. And we actually heard that on the broadcast. And one of the commentators on the broadcast, like, it was clearly the first time he had ever heard that. And he's like, oh, wow, I don't know how you just came up with that. It was like so clever. It's like Tiger said that 20 years ago. He's been saying it a million times since. But
yeah, I obviously rely on you for this stuff, but I'll say this because I'm no pro golfer or anywhere near that. But I'm just saying, like, my thought process is this: it's the former of this that matters so much more than the latter. First of all, these guys aren't going to, I mean, they'll complain some on their interviews and whatnot and that, but like, I'll give you a quick example, like Rory talking about bomb and gouge and that, but I think like people didn't realize how, like, it was really the full test. The public perception is what it was, because what do we see on TV? We see a lot more of off the tee, sure, but then it's almost always about what's happening on the green, right? And so you're just seeing these, oh, here's so-and-so for birdie. You're like, is it? Because they're 60 feet away. And so it's for birdie, but I will say, people are discounting and really disrespecting how much that's complete game. You better, because if you were in that rough off the tee and you tried to play the bomb and gouge, for the most part, yes, there was some greens you could hold, but because the pin placements were so tricky, it was like, dude, you're probably got a bogey now, because even if you can get it up there and it's rolling off the back, and then you get it up there and it doesn't hit the right ridge or whatever it might be, you still have 20 feet for par. And it's like, that's not good. And then tap in, miss, tap in, bogey. It's like, that still mattered on this course a lot. And so people weren't giving the full respect to the off the tee stuff, and then how people handled the approaches from their, subjective lot. Like, okay, I'm here, they're over there. How am I going to play this? How are they going to play this? Am I going to draw it in? Am I going to fade it in? Am I going to look at it straight on? Is that ridge going to lead me down? Can I get to that? Like, there was way more thinking to this course than the public perception of just like, oh, it's just hit it down there and then lag it up.
Yeah.
It's just what you see sometimes.
Just look at number 11 too. I think number 11 might be an even better example. Like we saw players all day long. Some of them were in the rough. A lot of them were in the fairway, but like 60 to 70 yards away. And the only shot they had was back of the green, lag it down the slope. Rye was further back, which meant he was taking a more full swing with his wedge, which meant he was able to create more spin, and he had 4 feet and made birdie on 11 on Sunday. So many players talked about how they couldn't access pins, when in reality, they just weren't thinking their way around the golf course enough to actually access those pins. Rye did on Sunday, especially on that back nine in his last 10 holes. So that was really, really cool. Yeah. And it gets, from a DFS standpoint, like the big takeaway for me was I came into the week really believing that around the green play wasn't going to matter. And strokes gained around the green ended up being extremely predictive of success. Now, this is where we get into that conversation of like, well, what does predictive mean versus what does descriptive mean? And predictive means this skill set translates into success, whereas descriptive means you had to do that particular skill really well. You didn't have to get, up and down a ton on this course. That wasn't like a separating skill set on the actual golf course. But the reason why this skill set ended up being so predictive was because strokes gained around the green has a ton of course management signals. So when we talk about course management being like the defining thing from this week, you look at which skills actually, or which skill sets actually do that. It was 2: strokes gained driving accuracy and strokes gained around the green. That's where basically all of the course management signal lies. And those 2 things ended up being really, really important, especially strokes gained around the green, particularly because you just had to think your way around the golf course, and the guys who were able to do that really well ended up shining. And so from a DFS standpoint, like that really would have changed the way that I approached the week. It would have meant that, I had a very balanced build, but it would have meant that the balanced build type players that I selected were better. Like Hideki Matsuyama would have been, one of the main guys. Now he really faded on Sunday. God, that was annoying. He had 7 feet on 6 to get to 5 under, missed it, and then forgot how to golf for the next 8 holes and was done. But yeah, it would have, like, just thinking through that, it would have led to a totally different approach from me with my lineups. The construction would have been very similar, but the type of player that I would have been attacking would have been very different.
Which is going to be a good segue in a minute when we talk about just portfolio management, even like your conversation is going to be around single entry to that. I will say too, I don't know your thoughts on this, just being like, I don't even know how something can be considered unfair if everyone plays the same thing. It reminds me like DFS. It's like, don't show up. Don't go against the best and play them if you don't want to, because it's literally the same game. We're all playing the same thing. You can find your way around it. Some did, some didn't. Can there be luck and variance involved? Absolutely. Look at the tournaments. It feels like every time somebody wins a golf tournament, you're like, oh, there's that freaking off the tree shot that somehow lands in the middle of the fairway. Destiny. Well, that happens to other stuff you don't see too, but in reality, I'm just saying, like, you are playing the same pin placements. It's whether you like them or not. If it's just as hard for everybody else, it may not be the scoring you wanted to see happen, but if you're making bogeys, other people are probably making bogeys. Those who are playing good are making better scores. I don't know if there's any rebuttal to that, but that to me is just like always weird.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were saying like it's unfair, I understand it, because essentially what they did with a lot of these pins is they put them on spines in such a way that, like, let's say you had a straight putt from 6 feet. Ordinarily, if you have a straight putt from 6 feet and you put it inside the right, it's going to hold its line and go in. If you put it inside the left, it's going to hold its line and go in. Here, if you hit it straight, it would go straight into the middle. If you hit it inside right, it would break out to the right. If you hit it inside left, it would break out to the left. And so essentially, like, you can say it's unfair, but to your point, Tambo, it was the same for everybody, and it's not like it's randomness that it's injecting, right? It's different than like the Chambers Bay greens from that US Open, where you could hit a putt down the middle, dead center, and it just bounces out of the hole. Like, that is unfair.
DJ at the end, man, still never forget that.
Just shrinking the margin of error is not unfair. That's what happens for everybody. And yeah, usually you don't see the shrinking of the margin of error on the greens. You see it with like super narrow fairways or really firm greens. It's just different. And yeah, it's unique for them, but I think unfair is the wrong word. And especially because it's the same for everybody, and it's not adding randomness. It's just making you be a little bit better on the greens. And actually, like, I was surprised that some of the better putters weren't able to take advantage of that. Cause I would have thought, hey, if I'm, for example, like, let's say I was one of the better putters from 6 feet, I would like the fact that you can't make that putt by going inside left. I would like the fact that you have to make it purely in the middle to make the putt, because as one of the better 6 foot putters, I would think, oh, I can do that better than most. That's an advantage for me. So yeah, that was.
By the way, you're allowed to practice and work on that. If you want to be a better putter inside 6 feet, like you can work on that and make that part of your game. And it's no different than what we're about to talk about with single entry, 3 max, etc. Also, side note, doesn't Aaron Rai, I forget what it is, like from way back, it's like a world record for, wasn't it like the most putts made from a certain, like from 10 feet or something? And it's like he did 75 in a row. I forget what it was, but it was like some type of record like that. If somebody remembers, throw it in the chat.
I think he got like a Tiger Woods practice 8 or something like that, and made, I don't know, 250 in a row from 6 or something crazy like that. But yeah, that was funny.
What was it? Now I got to just look it up. Aaron Rai, world record at 15 years old, sinking 207 consecutive putts from 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Magic. You can practice this stuff and get good at it and then make that part of your skill set. And by the way, putting really matters. So it's like, that's just a thing where sometimes it's a bit frustrating for people, and I get it, but just noting it, that is definitely a thing. My last comment would be, I love Justin Thomas when he's playing like that. That is better for the game. Him fired up, coming in, going out. It's just one player. I'm just saying, but it does matter. And that's the type of stuff you got to keep an eye on, because his pricing, the way it's been lately, has been down there. And it's not just about the results-oriented factor. It's like, that is the boom bust of what you're looking for. And if he's got the boom, like he did on Sunday, and just the way he finished his week, that can be very, very valuable at the price tags we've seen him at. And you can apply that to other golfers. I'm just using the most obvious one because it was that. Yeah, our guy Nick, shout out from earlier, already had it in here. Do anything 207 times in a row. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But all right, segue it off. We said this is going to be the last 5-10 minutes of the evergreen stuff, but just noting, you had talked a little bit to me offline. I was like, oh, we got to save this. This is going to be phenomenal for the, what we're talking about. I mean, what's a good topic? You brought it up. I said, yeah, I think this will be great. When it comes to your play, you've always played single entry. It's what you talked on other versions of this, where why that is, and like sort of how that led you down that. I know in your Discord, which is an awesome Discord. If you guys aren't part of it, definitely go check it out. But we'll get to the details after. But just noting Alex's Discord, he goes through some of this stuff personally as well. And you'd said, like, I play this way because I learned this and I ended up that, and that's how you got the single entry. Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned to me yesterday that you are thinking of transitioning more to 3-entry max. So I would love to have that conversation here. I think that's a good opening point. I'll let you run with it.
Yeah. So essentially I I'm committing to doing 3 entry for like the next month or so in PGA DFS, probably until the US Open. And if I get a ticket for the US Open, then I hopefully, I'm obviously doing as many lineups as I have tickets, but then after that, I'll reevaluate again and decide what I want to do. But there's a lot that kind of goes into this decision. And the first one was like, quite frankly, I've just been a little bit sick of having like really good reads on certain events and just not landing on the winning combination of things. And so, a couple times now, like especially I think there was one week, man, it might've been the Valero, where like back-to-back days in Showdown, I had, path option 1 for my lineup and then option 2 for my lineup. One was just a traditional 2v2. It couldn't have been worse. Like I think the one that I pivoted off of had like 17 birdies in a streak, and the one that I played had 3 birdies total. Like it was insane how bad the pivot was. Yeah. So it cost myself a takedown with that one. And the other one was like I was debating between just like going all in on an early stack and having a balance between early guys and the leaders, because it was a round 4 showdown. Went off of the total early stack. The early stack won a takedown for like one of our subscribers, Cat Guy, one of the awesome subscribers I've talked about before. And I was left with nothing. It was just like I just felt like, you know what, I'm going to improve my odds if I allow myself to play the multiple paths that I'm identifying as creating a real edge. So that was a big part of it. And then the other one is we've talked about this before in this kind of discussion, where I do think it's a myth that ordinarily that playing more lineups gives you a better chance of a takedown. And it's better said when you actually like kind of go through the entire logic. So option 1 is you play the same amount of money, you play the same contests and the same contest types, and you just have fewer dollars per lineup. Then you're going to win more often, but because each lineup is invested less, when you win, you're going to win less money. So one of the ways to counteract that is you say, okay, I'm still going to play the same amount of money, but now I'm going to play in larger contests so that when I win, I'm still winning the same amount. Okay, but now, even though you have 3 lineups instead of 1, you have to beat 3 times as many people to get that same amount of money. So again, you're not actually improving your odds of winning. Now you just have the same amount, or the same odds of winning. You just have 3 chances instead of 1. So that's typically a myth, but I'm in kind of a weird space, and I've been in a weird space for a while now when it comes to like my traditional bankroll management per contest, where there just aren't enough single entries and enough contests that I like where I can play the amount that I could play and what would be like considered the most amount of money that I could play, where it's still responsible bankroll management, and just play single entries and satellites and things of that nature. And so I kind of have room to just increase the amount that I'm spending each slate. And so I can do that, play the same contests that I usually play, the same, size contests that I usually play with the same investment per lineup, or at least similar investment per lineup, and just have more money invested, where I really am now improving my odds of getting a takedown by playing 3 lineups instead of 1. And that's especially true if I'm, diversifying that portfolio in a smart way, where I'm using, multiple paths to success, where, hey, if this doesn't work, at least that makes this path a little bit more likely to hit. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to give it a try. And I think that, a lot of this PGA season has kind of been building towards this decision for me, where I at least want to give it a try again. And the last part of it is the main reason why I have said, we've been doing Leverage Lane for a while now, going back to NFL season. And my main answer when someone asks me, why do I play single entry? It's that I just feel like I can do a better job of building one great lineup than multiple great lineups. And I think, with a lot of the research that I've been doing into DFS and some of the tools that I've been able to build over the last few months, like I think I now have the tools to do a really, really good job building 3 lineups in such a way where they're greater than the sum of their individual parts.
Yeah, we're going to have to vibe on this for a minute, and people, we put timestamps if you're watching it live. Hopefully you enjoy it. I would assume you do if you're sitting here with us. So we appreciate you. Make sure to hit that thumbs up for the channel. But like this stuff matters so much more to me. Like, my whole philosophy is DFS is how, not who. People always want the picks, the plays. We've been through this a million times over. It's just, to me, this stuff matters so much more. This is where people leave money on the table. You don't know how many people I work with on the side where they're like, man, I had the friggin' lineup. I was putting it in I changed it last minute. I would have won $5,000. So you could have just played both. Yeah, I could have. I mean, it was only going to be $15 more. And I'm never trying to bring them up like too much and scale them to say like you should be going from 15 to 300. I'm saying you're talking about 15 to 30, or you're talking about you could have played two $5 instead of 115 and put it in two $5 satellites and still got yourself a little bit less cash, be able to play both lineups, but probably picked up a ticket too for something bigger. Use baseball, $5, it could still pay $50K even in a $5 some days, but the $5 ticket might be for a 121 single entry that you never get to play in. And you chose to pick one lineup in a $12 single entry instead. You could have played the $20. I'm not scaling you up too much, but I'm just noting it. So a couple things I want to ask specifically for this situation. One, as longtime leverage lane watchers, now, like you said, it goes back to football. How would this change from your one entry playing single entry like a 3-max where it is just a 2v2 or something like that? And you're like, but I'm just,
I think you meant that the other way around. Playing 3-max like a single entry.
3-max like a single entry. Yes. Where the concept was simple of you saying, look, I got a really good lineup I feel great about, but I have a couple alternate versions of it. I got two guys at the top I'd like to flip. I got two guys at the bottom. I can just run all three of those and play 3-max like a single entry where it's basically the same lineup, making a couple flips. They all could cash and really be up there surrounding each other, but then have outs, a 2v2, a 3v3, whatever it ends up being, away from someone actually taking it down. It could go 1-2-10. It could go 1/30th, 40th, but it's like you could put yourself in a good spot. How does this change that, if at all, or will that still be under consideration for you?
Yeah, it's absolutely still a possibility each and every slate. It just depends on the slate. And so it's funny, like we're in TPC Craig Rant's week. Well, 2 years ago was actually a time that I used that exact strategy, playing 3 entry like a single entry, where there were 3 guys in the GPP scores who were like near the top of the board who were so clearly the 3 best options up top. I think it was Keith Mitchell, Jake Knapp, and Benny On. Interesting name to bring up. Yeah. But so like I wanted those 3 guys. I knew I wanted those 3 guys in the lineup. And then the value plays were just like, oh man, I don't like any of these guys, but some are projecting well, some have good GPP scores. Like there's no one that I feel confident about. There's no one that I feel anywhere near as confident about as those top 3 guys. So I'm just going to play 3 lineups. All 3 are going to have the same, 3 spend ups, and then they're all going to have different 3 value guys, and I'll take different routes. So like one was all in on course fit, which was, distance and around the green that week. One was, okay, well, what if accuracy matters a little bit more this week? One was, what if approach players, something like that. Maybe it was long irons or something like that. So I had a methodology for each of those individual lineups, but it was playing 3 entry like a single entry, because what I was saying is I need these 3 expensive guys to be the 3. And if any of them fail, all 3 of my lineups are going to fail, but I'm okay taking on that risk, because if I was doing that in single entry, obviously I'd be okay with it. And I just think that that's like the big advantage to take advantage of on this slate, and then I'll get different elsewhere. And so it's still an option. And I can't tell you, I don't know yet what my 3 quote unquote paths are going to be this week, but it's absolutely possible that I'll land on something like that, where I am playing 3 entry in a very similar way to single entry. I'm just giving myself more chances in the weakest part of the lineup.
It also gives you an option. It gives you optionality. I think people forget that. I've wrote articles on this on X at ToeTagginTambo. You go find it, but it's like it let the week come to you. And you mentioned like last week, for example, where you could have done something like, hey, if I had a thought this, almost like when people are saying, not against you, I'm saying, but like when people say, oh, a player should have known this and they could have played better. We do live and learn. It's win or learn. That's the methodology. But it's like you could have said last week, okay, I'm going to play the way I want, like you did. Feel very good about this. Here's my conviction. Here's what I'm rolling. Here's where I'm at. Then it's like, well, what if the course actually does have this around the green stuff come out to play because of this setup? Or what if they do this? Or what if this is the thing? You could have had that. And then even your third one could end up more similar to one or the other, or completely different again. But it gives you that optionality. And I think that's important. I am going to trademark something out of this. I'm going to call it the 3 evaluate. Because 3E for 3 entry and to reevaluate if you're playing single entry. I tell people this all the time. You don't have to be a single entry player. You just say you are. But it's my last question for you, at least for now on this. And then we'll move on because Scottie ownership's coming up and all that stuff we got to talk about for this week. But what is the concept or thought process of you on, okay, I'm going to play 3 entry max of whatever it is, whether it's the 153 max or whatever option you see fit. Why not just play the $200 single entry. Like that's $450. Why not just play the $200 single entry with $30K to first, the $200 single entry with $10K to first, and the $100 single entry with $5K to first? And then even if you want to put a few more bucks, throw them all in a satellite so that you could pick up a little bit more than whatever you think you would have won somewhere else. Is there any thought process around that, or any reason why you wouldn't consider that concept?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like if someone wants to do that, I wouldn't say that that's a bad option. Personally, the reason why I don't do it that way is because I think you're then introducing some variance of like, well, which lineup do I put in which contest? And then, that becomes like a big variable that you have to think through. It's a similar thought to why I played single entry. I'm just simplifying the process. If I don't have to think about which which lineup goes in which contest, that's one less variable that I have to quote unquote get right. And so I can just focus on the actual lineups themselves. It's extremely unlikely, for example, that if let's say I won the, $200 single entry with 10K to first and 277 people in it. It's really unlikely that a different lineup is going to win the $200 with 833 people and 30K to first, because I'm making different decisions for different reasons. If the $200 decisions were correct, it's likely that the other $200 decisions are somewhat incorrect, at least incorrect enough to not be able to win. So I don't feel like I'm cannibalizing myself very much. And I have the tools now to like actually test that and make sure that I'm not cannibalizing myself with the lineups that I build. So that's part of the process. The other thought is like, this honestly doesn't directly answer your question. Well, it kind of does. So like, let's say I'm in the $200, and the $100 single entry with 277 people. Well, if it's the $100 single entry that does really well, I'm winning 5K instead of 10K or 30K. I'm creating variance of how much I win when I win. And that's something that I'm trying to strip out, right? Like that's part of that initial discussion of I want to be in as much control as I can be of how much I win when I win. And if I'm in 3 totally different contests, I lose some control in that area. So I think that's maybe even a better way to answer your question.
Yeah, I think it's great. And obviously I want to know for you specifically, and you're thinking at a very high level, someone I extremely respect within this game. So it matters to me. Like I learn and pick up from that. The one thing I would say is that's different, and it's more for the general public, like people that are not maybe having those tools or being able to think through it and dial that all in, is just to say for most people playing $500, a lot of them haven't won 5,000 or 10,000 or 30. So it's like for that part, I just would remove some of that from their thought process if they feel better about this, only because any of those scores are going to be good for you. But also, if you're playing a couple of them in a similar way, you now could capitalize on 2 wins. Like if your 2v2 is still really good and both 6 of 6s, you could have a 30K win and the 5K win, and it's the $200 in the middle that doesn't hit. Or you win 15K and like, I wish it was in that one. But you, in my opinion, in just for those, especially that are hand building it out or whatever it might be, and you can scale this down to, we're using $500, 200, 200, 100. This could be 25, 20, and 12. I'm just explaining it in the way that like those wins are probably still really good for you. They're still phenomenal hits. And then also the fact of, I don't think there's anything wrong with going the opposite side of his point for him is like, yeah, then I have to like, I could be cannibalizing, or I have to think about what one's winning me, what amount. I think it's good thought process, especially for a newer or intermediate player, to have to think through, what would I do if I just had one? And that's probably your $200 with 30K to first, because that's a field size similar to like a mega. That's a field size similar to a 4444. That's similar to a 555, a 600, an 888. If you only got one ticket, and chances are you usually have 0, as do we, like you got to win them. They're not easy to win, but they're fun to play for. But when you have that, you probably only have one. So even if you're doing the process I just mentioned to Alex, and you want to go his route, I'm good with it. I understand why he's going that route. And he said you could go the other way, just noted his reasons. But if you go the other way, you're probably still getting a really good win for yourself. You're still making a bunch of money on the money you've invested. You can think about that in the future, but you also are forcing yourself to think through, what would be my number one? Because I promise you, almost always, that is going to have to be a thought that you have to entertain on the week you have your 555 ticket, if you have one. It's not often you're sitting there rolling with 3 of them. So anything that you can do to sort of help your position and make you think harder and work harder, I always advocate for that. But I think your reasoning was very sound, and obviously you've got stuff you're using that helps you think through it that way. So Just wanted to go through there as a good topic though of discussion.
Yeah, I think the contest structures also help answer this question. So like you brought up the possibility that like you could win the 10K and the 30K for 40 total. It's also possible that you'd win the 10K and the 5K for 15. And if you had them both in the 250, you'd win 20K and 10K for first and second place. And why do you get more for that? Because the 3 entry has 25% to first instead of 20% to first for the 2 single entries. And it's also like somewhat flat near the top as well. 6th place gets 10% of what first place makes with 355 people. So it's very top heavy, but at the top, it's somewhat flat, which I really, really like. So I like that contest structure. Now, if I were doing single entry, it might be a little bit more top heavy than I like for 355 entrants instead of like the 20% to first with 277. So, what I'm looking for in 3 entry is slightly different from what I'm looking for in single entry, which again is part of that conversation. But the other thought that I had, and I think this will be a helpful like way to finish this conversation for a lot of people, is PGA DFS for me, a lot of it is about winning tickets into these major championships and getting into the megas and having that massive ceiling without spending a ton of money on a week in basis, because I feel like I can earn those tickets and get in that way. One of the difficulties this season in relation to the last 2 is DraftKings has been a lot less consistent in offering satellites in showdown contests. And so in the last couple years, like every single week, I've essentially had, let's call it 4 opportunities to win a ticket, because usually I didn't have good satellite options for the Thursday showdown, so I haven't even played those. But I'd have main slate, Friday showdown, Saturday showdown, Sunday showdown, 4 chances each week. This year, most of the time, I've had 1 chance each week in main slate because the showdowns have been so inconsistent and their offerings for satellites have been so bad this year, where maybe like at most I've had 2 per week. And so I think, in addition to just not having a great DFS season, I've also had way fewer opportunities to win those tickets that can then change things, right? Like you win 1 ticket and you have 1 good tournament and your entire season is made. I made $50,000 in the week 1 NFL DFS season mega from a ticket that I won in the PGA Tour Championship. Yeah. And like that one outcome guaranteed that I had a profitable NFL DFS season. It only takes 1 shot, and I haven't had as many opportunities to win those. And so part of this decision is also like realizing if I have 1 lineup in the $70 and the $37 and then another $70 that comes out, satellites for the mega, and I win 3 tickets, that's not 3 times as good as winning 1 ticket, because the most important thing is you just get in to the satellite. And so having 3 lineups instead of 1 also definitely improves my odds of actually winning a ticket, which is such a big part of what the PGA DFS season is about for me.
Yeah, for sure. No, great topic. We'll have more like that in the future. We're going to get to Course Fit in just a moment. If you guys want to check out shipitnation.com, just to remind people, the promo for the all access special is still on. It's $49 for the entire month. That should take us through right up to US Open. I think it's very close to that week or anywhere there. So just noting that it's less than it costs for PGA content only per month to get everything for all access, including the Discord and SaberSim right now. So you guys can check that out. Let's talk about Course Fit for this week. We'll get to CJ Cup, Byron Nelson here now. So how are you seeing the course set up? Is there any weather concerns or thoughts coming in with that? Let's try to tie those together, and then we'll get to the chalk build and have the Scottie conversation, because we know that's a big one this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because this week is actually a little bit reminiscent of last week in the fact that we do have a couple like big uncertainties. So where I'll start is just what we've seen from this course in the past. This has been one of my favorite Course Fit models. There's a big emphasis on distance and a big emphasis on around the green play. Putting's down a little bit, approach play is kind of neutral, and then accuracy off the tee is less predictive than usual. And I really have enjoyed this Course Fit model, and I've had a ton of success here, in large part because it's so counterintuitive to what most people think of when they think of birdie fests, as this golf course has been. People think of birdie fests as approach play and putting contests, and this place has been anything but that. And so I feel like it's really provided a big edge in the past. I'm hopeful that it continues to do so. But the 2 big variables and uncertainties this week are, number 1, the course has been renovated. And the number 1 thought that I've heard about the renovations, including from people who live on and around the golf course, is that the green complexes are a lot more difficult. They're not going to be as difficult as Aronimink, but they're going to be nowhere near as easy as they've been here in the past. I should also mention that like the around the green signal in the past has largely been about scoring on scoring holes, making birdies, and not about saving pars. So I do think that will continue, and you might even get an addition of some saving par signal if the green complexes really have gotten that much more difficult. So I very much expect around the green play to still matter, and I very much expect distance to still matter. It's more like, does putting become a lot more predictive than it's been in the past? Does accuracy become more predictive if you have to have a little bit more control coming into the greens? Don't know the answer there, but the other big variable is there's been rain, and we could continue to get more. We might not even see golf tomorrow. Like there are potential storms here. I can even share the screen so we can get this up there. But it's hard to say what we're going to get, but like, look at Thursday. I mean, there's lightning in the forecast all day long, so we might not get any golf tomorrow, as far as we know. And then there is some wind as you get later into the week. We can look at some different models, but yeah, it's very hard to say. HRRR. Shout out to DGen.
Yes.
It's not showing the lightning, so we have absolutely no idea what we're going to get. But we've already gotten a lot of rain. One thing I will say, there's been a ton of rain in the area. We should expect the course as a whole to be soft, but the whole course was renovated, including new greens, and new greens are typically really, really firm. So there's also this like added uncertainty of, well, the industry might be totally wrong about how firm the greens are. The greens might actually still have, some real balance. And especially if you get later into the week and the winds pick up and the sun comes out and there's no more rain. I mean, it looks like we're going to get rain throughout the week, but yeah, there's just a lot of kind of uncertainty around the golf course and how it's going to test guys. I think I'm still going to lean into the traditional course fit model and what we've seen in the past and just hope it's similar. But there are at least like reasons now to build at least one lineup for me, now that I have three, that really deviates from how this course has tested players in the past. So skill set stacking is very much in play this week.
Yeah, Timmy Dub says DG, that's Data Golf, says last. Didn't we just have this conversation like 2 weeks ago or something and like go through it all? But maybe you want to rebuttal this or talk to it quickly. But any thoughts on this here?
Yeah, I mean, the only place that Data Golf and I really differ most of the time in our course fit analysis is when driving accuracy is part of the equation, because their driving accuracy is percentage of fairways hit or percentage of fairways gained relative to the field. And I just think that's an awful measure of accuracy. We've talked about this in the past, the strokes gained driving accuracy. Like this isn't one of those things where I think like you can have an opinion either way. I have data that says like the way that we do driving accuracy is far superior from a modeling perspective. And also I think it just passes the eye test, right? Like if you look at Scottie Scheffler, for example, that Scottie is extremely accurate off the tee. Guys like Keith Mitchell, Rory McIlroy, Cam Young, that these guys are really accurate off the tee. They're not just long. I can't remember which star golfer said it recently, but someone said, it might have even been Scottie, that Rory is probably the most accurate off the tee in the world. My strokes gained driving accuracy doesn't even have him that accurate, but it just gets you, I think it just helps to understand like percentage of fairways hit is not a measure of accuracy. It's more than anything else, an inverse measure of how long somebody is. You don't need that signal. You already have driving distance to tell you how long a guy is. And the reason for that is someone at 200, someone driving the ball 270, let's say, has a much wider margin of error to still hit a fairway than somebody hitting it 310, 320, 330. And so that's why you're getting such a dramatically like inverse relationship in between driving accuracy as percentage of fairways hit and driving distance. That's not the skill that you're actually trying to measure when you look at driving accuracy. You're looking at how in control is this player of his misses. How often does he hit the exact line that he's intending to hit? And when he misses his target, how far, what margin of error does he miss? Because when you get on a hole where you really need to hit a fairway, if you're someone who hits the ball really far, you can just dial back with 3-wood. Now you're on the same scale of a margin in terms of margin of error as someone hitting driver, because they need to hit driver for that length. You don't get that penalty, and now you're more accurate than that player, and that shows up. If you're on a hole where you can't miss it left, you can miss it right, and there's no penalty in missing right, you can just shift your target and then miss right, and it's totally fine. And so I think that's probably why. But The CrossFit model has been like really definitive about this. So let me get the exact weights. An 18% boost to the predictive value of driving distance and a 15% decline to the predictive value of driving accuracy on this golf course.
Yeah. So I see that. And obviously we'll talk about our leverage lanes later, but I can promise you, Stat, there will be only one conversation. We won't be talking about the one that has 50K to first and $500 to sixth or seventh or whatever it is, like just absolute atrocious. Like this, those are horrible tournaments. So it doesn't matter, but we'll be talking about DraftKings here. Let's have the Scottie conversation. I will note quickly, shout out to Leo Skies, said he won the 50K last year in the $5 drive to green. This week it's 30K. It's just a payout structure difference. It's a nice structure. I think it's like 30 grand to first, like 3,500 to seventh or something. And it's, again, you're playing against a lot more players, but it's only $5 to get in. It's definitely a much nicer setup from that perspective, but they've been fooling around with it. Some weeks that's 100K and it's bad too. So I get it, but we're always talking about DraftKings on here. So let's keep it rolling. Let's have the Scottie conversation. 14,800. The next up is Siwoo at 9,900. I talk all the time about, Yahtzee Scheffler, right? You got Scottie Scheffler, and then you just have to fill in the other five, and they got to land on the exact thing to get the winning score. And that's how it can be. Obviously, our guy Ryan is in here talking earlier about EVR. EVR played the best golf of his life, maybe last year at this tournament, and still lost by 7 or 8 strokes. Like, it just the way it went. And obviously that was with Scottie, but I will say, it is another interesting conversation. It really reminds me, though, most of going back to the first week, maybe the only week I disagreed with you on this and didn't end well for me anyway, but it didn't really matter both sides. But I guess the point was you had some really good math around, like, yes, the Scottie win equity, sure. But if you took Scottie and these two guys versus these three guys, you use popular guys everywhere. So it was fair. It was like your win equity is only slightly more, but your top 10, top 20, et cetera, goes like way down on the Scottie stuff versus this. And then there is a cut and 6-6 matters and all these other factors. So I'm very curious to hear your take on Scottie this week. And if you have any of that math or any thoughts around it, by all means, bring it to the table. But whatever you want to talk about when it comes to $14,800 Scottie Scheffler in the field at hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like some of the same type of math that we did in that show doesn't translate as well because Scottie's like even more lopsided this week in terms, especially in win odds. Like Scottie's at 33.5% for us over at FTN Fantasy. Siwoo, Spieth, Koepka 2.6, 3.6, 2.6%. Like it's insane how much win equity Scottie has. So you're absolutely losing that battle. But where it starts to get interesting or where it's like just as clear in the opposite direction, your chance of having at least 3 in the top 20 was one of the things that people really enjoyed last time. So let's just run through that again. Sure. If you go Siwoo, Spieth, and Koepka, you've got about a 7% chance of having all 3 in the top 20. If you go Scottie and the 2 most likely guys to finish top 20 in the price range that amounts to the same amount of money as Siwoo plus Spieth plus Koepka, you're at like 2.5%. So 7% versus 2.5%. You're significantly more likely to get all 3 in the top 20 with the more balanced build. So it's the same sort of thing as the last time. They're pretty even at top 5. Then the balanced build is pretty clearly better at top 10. And then it gets somewhat even again, when you get to miscut, still balanced build is more favorable, but it's not crazy. But like, so it's a very similar conversation to the one we've had in the past. I think the big difference this week compared to then is this time around, that next range of guys could be insanely chalky. Like right now, we've got Siwoo at 43.5% in single entry, 31.2% for Spieth, 19% for Brooks Koepka, and Scottie around 20%. So I think it's worth a lot of conversation first and foremost about what we actually expect ownership-wise for these guys, because the industry as a whole does not agree. Like there's one source that people use a lot of that has Scottie over 50%. So I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that. Obviously, I think we are probably the lowest in the industry on Scottie's ownership. Could be wrong about that, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on where you actually think the Scottie ownership lands, and obviously like Siwoo, Spieth, Koepka ownership is going to be very dependent on where that Scottie ownership lands.
Yeah, it's funny because we're right in the middle. We're in like the 30 range on Scottie, and you guys are lower, and then you see it higher at some other places. It's like, to me though, the projection and the contest sims are just pounding Scottie. It doesn't matter. And I know even like I look at everything across the industry. I think on your side of things, you're seeing it as well, I'm sure. But everyone wants to, again, people focus way too much on the names. And I think that matters when you're like, thinking about something and it's your one lineup and you want to get the guys you want in it. Sure, I get that. But remember, the optimizers and the people playing the most lineups and the ones that sort of leak into this and make this stuff happen, they're not really looking at that. And so it's just putting in what it's putting in. Scottie's projection is far and away, like, I get the 5K price bump, but it's levels away from these guys on projections and ceiling and all these different things that these other situations will look at. I'm sure the GPP score is off the page because if he's at any type of ownership that's 20% or 25%, it's like, man, what the hell are you doing? You're letting this guy not be 40 or 50% owned. Now, I think that catches up some, but your stuff's initial, our stuff's initial, will land somewhere down in that range. But I would definitely still think over 30, to be honest. And the reason I think that is because, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even on your side, but I know on our side, I'm sure your course fit and your projections and the guys that are down low and same for ours. I don't care that it's Lee Hodges, Taylor Moore, Kiefer, Kevin Yu, Max McGreevy. I don't care what you think about those people as golfers and names and no names to you or whatever you think, they will fit with Scottie. And there's just so many combinations. And some of them should even have, based on what you've talked about and even what you've got over at FTN, I'm assuming pretty good course fit setup. Like at the end of the day, they would still be somewhere between their course fit and their strokes gained of like, yeah, they can work. They could work here. Therefore, those lineups can work. So I think there is a huge difference this week in like people hand building and feeling comfortable. Like, you know what? I'll just fade Scottie and play 6 really good golfers. I can get Siwoo, I can get Brooks, and I can get somebody else I like. I'm going to have lineups like that too. But I do think that that people are going to link to optimizers. It could be a lazy week also, which leads to more optimizers sometimes, or, quick things. I think there will be a lot of Scottie out there still. And I do think, like, again, if you want me to range it better, I'll make 30 my average and just say 25 to 35. But I do think we see over 25 for Scottie.
Interesting. I'm not going to say that I think you're wrong, but I feel pretty strongly that it's going to be less than what most of the industry expects. And let's go through it this way. So like I think the best ways to do it is, as we've talked about all season, the decision of whether or not to play Scottie is not actually about how you feel about Scottie. Everyone feels really good about Scottie's chances this week. If your stance is, oh, I think Scottie's going to win, guess what? You're making the same like first thought that 50% of the field is using. So you're not making any real stand with that. The place you actually have to have conviction on to build a Scottie lineup is you have to have guys that you like down in the 6K range, in the low 7s. And so one of the things that I always do when I'm kind of trying to solve this is I say, okay, well, who are the guys that the field is actually going to have conviction on in the value range? And there are 3 that stand out. Rico Hoey, 76, Jordan Smith, 74, and then a little bit Max McGreevy, 73. The problem is if you put those 3 guys in with Scottie, you're left with 6,450 for the remaining 2 spots. Are people going to have 2 $6,500 players that they like? I think the answer is absolutely not. We have nobody down there even projected for like 2% ownership. So you got to take somebody out and go a little bit more balanced, and then you're in the upper 6s. Are people going to find 2 or 3 upper 6K guys that they like? Again, I think the answer is absolutely not. And so I just don't see a real path for Scottie being as owned as what a lot of people expect, just because like you've got to have conviction on players in a range where I think that there are absolutely no players that people are going to have conviction on.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that part of it. I guess like the conversation around single entry and the higher stakes, smaller field stuff and whatnot. Like it is pretty clear. Like even looking at our early initials, the best Scottie lineup is 10 points less still than the best lineup that just jams in those 3 dudes that you talked about. Mm-hmm. Now, how you actually play this week and why and what your attack is totally different than what's going to happen and what people will actually get. What I'll say is if people are just looking at it the way you just presented it, then yes, Scottie would be lower because the setup of what you just said. If you can't have 3 of those guys, you got to take one out. So let's say you take out, let's take out McGreevy, okay? And we'll leave in Hoey. I think there is a chance that then we see something along the lines of like a Champ getting a little more ownership. We talk about the combinatorial ownership. I think someone like Cam Champ gets pushed in a little bit. And then maybe like, again, this is what's crazy about it though. Even if you believe like Chandler Blanchett or something like based on just like early projections, that still leaves you another $6,700 guy and just have kind of the same build as everyone else. So what you would need to get more comfortable with, again, hand builders probably won't. And that's why I think you're going to see in the higher stakes, I would see Scottie be lower than people think because of this exact reasoning. They want some of that other stuff. But I will say, if someone else is looking at it from like, okay, I can get comfortable, or an optimizer, I honestly do think then you start to see, even though these guys are all like 7%ers or less, let's just say it's, let's take out Jordan Smith here. I'm going to take them all out actually and just go down to the bottom. It's like I said, then is it like a Kevin Yu, Lee Hodges, Taylor Moore? You can then get a 67, 60. So then it's your Cam Champ again with your, I don't know, Jesper Svensson or Patrick Fishburne or Blanchett fits that build perfectly. And he's like the chalky. So there's like a chalkier version where people get comfortable with the low sevens that they do land on, but it doesn't project as well. So I'm very interested to see. And I think that can actually make for, good Scottie lineups in the MME stuff, specifically if it's like a larger field, because if he wins and does what he does again, someone's going to have those combinations and get that version right. But I would be wanting to overcommit to it in that if I'm going to it, like I wouldn't just want to play mid-range Scottie or like, oh, let me just get 20% and see what happens and hope I have the right one. It's like, I would kind of want to commit to Scottie more in this instance, because you are going to be ignoring the projection, median projection, and ignoring the names, almost having to force that to make it happen, because the optimizer is still pushing some Scottie, but it's once more of those balanced builds, because if you take out Scottie and get to the balanced build right now, I've got Siwoo, Spieth, and then something like Hoey, Smith, McGreevy, and Blades Brown, or you can go Tom Kim and Doug Gim is another one. Like Eric Cole could almost fit in that and drop somebody else $100, but it's kind of like that, right? Like two of Siwoo, Spieth, and Brooks fit really easily with all those mid-range 7K guys that we talked about.
What do you think of Spieth this week and how the field is going to kind of gravitate towards him or not? Because he was spectacular tee to green last week, and just like he's got a mental block on the greens when he's playing well, man. Like he was just awful putting for birdie after day one, especially. As soon as he had a chance to really make a move up the leaderboard, it was just atrocious on the greens. I mean, he was hitting 6-foot putts that weren't coming within 4 inches of the hole. Like it was atrocious. So I'm kind of curious where, on the one hand, you show that kind of tee to green form coming into what people are going to consider like a home state tournament, and they're going to want to play him on the other. Like at some point, people have to just be sick of the whole Spieth experience. And I feel like that could kind of go either way this week.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it's a combo. It's like Spieth and Kim. Like, I don't think many are going to like just say one or the other. I think it's going to be that, because there is no really good Scottie Siwoo lineup or something. Like you're not seeing that, or Scottie Spieth. So it's like, I get some people would say, okay, he's a pivot. I know Brooks will be lower owned for sure, but I think Siwoo and Spieth is just like the instant starting point. And that is, to me, the chalk build. I know like people want to talk so much about Scottie. I think we kind of did, but it's what I said. When you optimize the lineup with that has Siwoo and Spieth in it, you said who? Hoey, Smith, and McGreevy, right?
Yep.
Let me just fill that in. It leaves you with 8,000, which allows you to be Brennan, Olsen, Tom Kim, Blades Brown, Haotong Lee, Siwoo, anything you want. And then obviously there's multiple versions of that, because now the Matty Schmids, Austin Eckroads, Doug Gims, Patrick Rogers, ADDC, Boha, like whoever you want to mix and match in that, there's nowhere to go up. It's not like you'd be like, oh, I'll move off Siwoo now and go up to no one. You can't. Like you said, you can't really get into that good version. You get to a Scottie lineup that feels uncomfortable. So that's why I thought the conversation around Scottie is so interesting, that to me, there is the chalky Scottie lineup. We just explained it has two upper 6K guys. Keep that in mind. And when we're talking about how to leverage it, that'd be how you leverage it. Most Scottie lineups, no matter what you want to do, kind of land you in that Cam Champ and somebody else. So keep in mind, Cam Champ could also be a little more owned than you think, right? Combo for that, no matter how you look at it. But also think about how the real chalk build is not a Scottie build. Like I said, for us, it's almost 10 points off. Even with Scottie's projection himself far and away, people are not remembering that the 5K is also far and away, and that changes things quite a bit for your builds. So I think in the MME, if someone wants to go, our guy Leo Skis, who said he won the $5 here last year, slamming Scottie, no problem if you're committed to it, because you just have to ignore what's going on down below. You will get some crazy shit down below, right? You will get some guys down there like, TPC Lee is also here. So, maybe people end up running with that a little bit once they need somebody and feel good about like the course history setup. But I guess beyond that, I'm saying like you will need to get some of the guys down there that people have to take chances on, whether it's, Ben Martin, Cam Davis, Henrik Norlander, Davis Riley. And people will tell me all these bad things about them and their names. It's not going to be about that at that point. That's what you have to remember. It's almost like funny how much I have to talk about my philosophy all year round and for years about like how, not who with DFS. And at these types of tournaments, all of a sudden everyone's in on that if they have to be, right? They're like, oh, I don't really care. He's not that good. He makes Scottie work and I want a lot of Scottie. So you're getting it now. That's kind of the point. If it is a Scottie week, there is going to be somebody that has Scottie lineups because there's so many combinations. There will be people that lock him to get rid of the 30% Siwoos and the 28% or 25% or whatever Spieth ends up coming in at. So it's like, that's another thought process to it all. But that's the only other way to really get natural off of the most common builds. Because like you said, even a good Scottie lineup is hard to build with even 2, if not 3 of like the Hoey, Smith, McGreevy, and there's 10 other names around them. You could sub in for that.
I think you landed on the exact chalk build, by the way. Siwoo, Spieth, Brennan, Hoey, Smith, McGreevy. Like that to me is the chalk build. You've got to figure out how to beat that lineup this week. And that's kind of it.
I think we have it 2 points off right now, but it's right there and it makes a ton of sense. I think people look at it like, again, we see these all the time, but it's like not that people dive too far into this, but it's like a 998, 777. It's like, okay, it's right in that range. Obviously you can flip those 7s to make it a 9-9 with 4 7s. People forget this. You're pegging it and saying like, putting a prediction that might be the most popular build this week and the most duplicated. True. But what you talked about last week was so much more important. And we know this, but to rehash, if people missed it, of you saying like, it's more about the common construction than the most duplicated build. And the talks of like the 2v2s and the 3v3s and what goes up against it. I just listed like 10 guys in that range that could be, I don't think it's going to be Max McGreevy. Good for you. It's not rude. It's just factual. Like I get what you're saying, but maybe it's not. Maybe it ends up being Gim, who's $200 more, and Brennan ends up being Blades Brown or Tom Kim. Congrats. Like you pegged the same damn thing just with 2 different people. But the point being, it's more about what is the common theme here. And the common theme is nowhere can the 8Ks be played. First of all, right now, moving and segueing into like leveraging the chalk build, like how? The Scottie lineups don't go there. They can barely go to the 7s. These lineups don't go there. And then on top of it, it's like 3+ 7K guys is the common build. When you land on 3+ 7K guys, it puts you in the 9Ks. So it is cool to build a lineup that has, and I'm not going to put the whole one out there, but if you went with like a Cootie Thompson Rio start, yeah, you'll be different for sure because you got 3 9Ks. You could still get an 8K in there. You could do. That is a way to leverage it for sure. But you also will know you're kind of going like 6 completely off the board guys. Not to say it's a bad thing. Just what you're doing when you do it. It's easy to find the best way to put it. It's easy to find lineups that aren't duplicated. You play NFL Showdown and the guy posts a report and I love it. I think it's still interesting to look at, but it's like, man, this guy's the man. He found 147 unique lineups of 150. I'm like, what? Let me look at this. And he has it right on the sheet. And then you go see, and his average salary his average spend is $45,000. Yeah. Again, not to say it's bad or wrong. That person is playing risk versus reward strategy. It's not how much you win. It's not how often you're right. It's how much you win when you are right. Shout out to my boy Title. Like that's what they're playing. But of course you're going to get 147 unique lineups when you're leaving $5,000 on the table in every build. I guarantee you they don't project as well, but they don't need to because they're playing a different game and a different risk appetite. So that stuff is all easier to figure out. What we're trying to say here is what's the common theme? And to me, it's clear cut. It's 2 9K guys, or if you want to really simplify it, it's 3+ 7K guys. Because even the Scottie builds could have 3 really cheap 7K guys and still make it work. So just noting it from that perspective, Alex, I think that's my thoughts. The leverage to me, the clear plan, it's not my lane. I don't even know if it will be this week, but just noting it, like nobody can really play these 8K guys. I actually don't know. Eric Cole, Brennan, maybe, but we're talking like what, 10 to 12 on them for a range, and then everybody sub 10, or again, they maybe a few of them get to 11, 12, but it doesn't seem like anyone's going to be overly popular outside of maybe Brennan because he fits that common build, or Cole because Cole's $100 more.
Yeah, I actually do have Brennan up at 17%, but yeah, I mean, I'm otherwise I'm
It's in that,
definitely
like,
with you
exact
there.
build too that it mostly fits. So I think that's
Yeah.
somewhat interesting. All right,
Mhm.
where do you want to go from here with like leveraging it then? Because I do think we don't get a lot of clear cut weeks, but the weeks we do is usually Scottie weeks or where there's like one or the other.
Mhm.
This week it's actually not even him, like we said, it's just because of him we talk about it, but also two lazy weeks, right? Lazy weeks where there's more congregation on just one set of plays or one optionality of like, okay, this construction fits, it's pretty common, and go from there. You know, somebody Riddle Softball said, I like having a lineup. It's not even about Jagger for me, but saying I like having a lineup where 7,800 is my worst guy. And you can most certainly do that on a week like this. If he's saying Jagger, even if you had a Brennan in there, you could have like Brennan, Bez, and still have 8,600, where it's like, okay, now I'll get another guy like Cole. Now you have almost 9,000 left, and you could fit another. So you could do like Jagger at 77. He's not even one of the guys that fit the Scottie build or the chalk build with Siwoo and Spieth, and then land on that. But is there anything else you're thinking of? Like I'm thinking about some other things of like one of Siwoo and then jumping into that 8K range and landing down a little bit lower, like is a different way to go about it. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I basically have like 4 thoughts of how you can leverage this chalk build. The first is you start very similar up top, and then you just get like totally different with your value plays. And you basically say Brennan, Hoey, Smith, and McGreevy are not good enough or consistent enough players to warrant this ownership. And I'm just going to build my lineup on the premise that that chalk fails. And I'm going to put myself in position to really take advantage if that chalk fails. So that's option 1. I don't have any issue with that. I think that's fine. Option 2 is also really simple. You just play Scottie because there isn't a chalk Scottie build because you're literally choosing between 1, 2, 3% players. So like you can kind of do whatever you want with Scottie. Option 3 is you start similar, but then you add a third kind of mid-tier stud, if you will. So like a third 9K guy. And now you can't have 4 balanced guys. So now you kind of have to dip to 1 risky play or, 3 low 7Ks where there's a surprisingly little amount of ownership in the low 7s, which is something I noticed. So you can do that. And then the fourth option, the one that I'm obviously most drawn to is, as anybody who has watched the show all year knows, and that's just go more balanced. And so that could be one of Siwoo, Spieth, and then you go to like the 8K range instead, or it can be all 8K range, or you start in the low 9s instead of Spieth and Koepka, and you start with like, I don't know, Davis Thompson and Michael Thorbjornsen or something like that. So that seems like the strongest way. The only thing is basically everyone between like 8K and the mid 9K range has a chance of being double-digit ownership. So if you're looking for a way to build a lineup where you have some like 2%ers, you can't be that balanced. So and obviously like this is a big field, so there are quality players who are going to be 2% owned and have a legitimate chance of doing something really good this week. So I mean, at this moment, like I don't even know what my leverage lane is going to be, but there are, I think, more ways than usual to really pivot off of this chalk build.
Yeah, and well, I will say this: while anything can get there, because I loved all 4 of those. Number 2 was a really strong one. Number 4 was a really strong one. If you guys are going back to it, but just noting, like, I don't know if like the all 8K guys is really good this week, because I think like from your point that you brought up a good one of like the guys down there with Scottie was your second one. It's like playing Scottie and people are like, oh, but Scottie this or whatever. First of all, he might be lower owned than we expect. Second of all, like you said on your side. And second of all, it's like all 5%ers that you end up with them. So yeah, it's hard to get it right. Sure. Commit in the, MME stuff, I think is fine, but just noting it also, even if you go with the chalkiest of the chalk in the 9K of Siwoo Kim and Spieth, but just add Pearson Cootie, you still have over 7,000 left over. So you can actually get 3 of the guys that don't fit the Hoey, McGreevy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's going to, become more important shortly, but it's not saying that you're, fading Scottie and Siwoo and Spieth. That could end up being almost, 50%, 45%, 40%, whatever of the win equity in this field. It's just thinking about how to get different. You could go, like I said earlier, okay, Siwoo is going to be the most owned. I like Spieth if he could just find a freaking putter, like you said, or whatever it turns out to be. Well, he leaves 8,000 left over. And then listen, I'm not saying to play the chalk ones. I'm just giving you the examples. If you really did like going down to it, Jordan, Smith, and McGreevy, you have 8,500 left for 3 spots. So you could get a lower owned 9K that no one's on to break it up, and 2 8K guys. Again, no one's on that build. It's only the 2 7s, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it just becomes, and I'm not saying that's the best way to go. There's tons of options down there. I'm just noting it when you're picking one of the 3rd highest owned, let's say, of Spieth instead of Siwoo. And again, I shouldn't say it like that because he could end up being the 2nd highest owned. Like Scottie is lower than expected, to your point. But my point being, you're picking one of the 3, but then using the one that's easiest to sort of fit into a build that can still hold top 20 equity, strong projection, and avoid the 3+ 7K guys, even if you have 2 that end up being 8 to 12% in there. It's like you're not actually killing yourself that way because you still have 3 spots where you could actually have a low owned 9K guy and 2 completely unowned 8K guys. You could have 2 upper 7K guys that nobody's on and then land on another 9K guy that's decent, but just below the most popular one. So there's actually a ton of different things that you can go. Aaron, you're here with us every week supporting. This is just atrocious. Like, we're never worried about that. If you withdraws for any reason, you're toast. Like, no shit. Like, you're screwed anytime someone WDs. So that has no thought process into going into it. It's like accounting for injuries before they're real or something. Or like, oh, if I had known SGA got injured, I wouldn't have played him on my team. Like, it's Scottie Scheffler. We talk through the real reasons of why or why not or how or anything you want to talk about, but it has nothing to do with if he WDs. It's way more about your overall thought on how you think the slate comes to you. And I think we gave a ton of ideas. Alex, I think all 4 that you gave were strong enough to sort of just say, that's good. From a betting perspective this week, you don't have to give them all because I know you put some out there, but there was some pretty interesting names. I'm not sure if you want to give the furthest, deepest, because that one would be funny. But, from what we talked about last week, with Aaron Rye getting the W and, big supporters, but maybe you want to give it, maybe you don't. What else do you got over there from the betting breakdown?
Yeah, I want to see if he's still at that number because I don't want to say that number if he's come crashing down.
How could he come? I mean, we bet him with you, so yes, he might come down a little bit, but you can't really come crashing down from that number. I don't think
he's come crashing down to 350 to 1 in this Bet365 each way market. He's available around 250 elsewhere. Billy Horschel is my favorite outright of the week, and honestly, like this is a lot to do with the contention performance score that I built. He has the best contention performance score on tour. And it's really weird to think about because he has been in contention so infrequently. So when you think of like the best closers, you just don't think about him. But I'll just read off in the last like 5 years. These are his rounds. And now the contention performance score counts Saturday and Sunday rounds when in contention. So you don't lose that signal of like someone totally melting down when they slept on the lead Friday night. But I don't have access to all of the rounds. It was built, but I just looking it up, all I have is Data Golf, their pressure tool. And so these are Billy Horschel's contention rounds on Sunday. 0.9 above expectation at the BMW in 2024, 4.5 strokes above expectation in the Open Championship in 2024, 6.4 strokes over expectation when he won the Corrales Punta Cana in 2024, 1.1 at the Memorial in 2022, +4 at the BMW PGA in 2021, +1.8 and +2.4 in 2021 and 2020 at the WGC Workday and the Wyndham Championship. He had only 4 rounds where he lost strokes to his expectation while in contention in those years. Like, the guy is just nails when he's in contention, and so much of outright betting, especially at this long shot, range, is not. It's not, do I expect him to play well? It's if he plays really well, if he has his A game, what can he actually do with it? And for most of the guys, like anywhere near the 250, 350, I got him at 450 to 1. Most guys in that range, their A game is going to be like a 15th place finish. With Horschel, you actually know that he can win golf tournaments. You know that he can get crazy, crazy hot. We haven't seen it in a while. The form isn't there, but that's kind of the other thing that I like about this. It's like the last event that Billy Horschel won, he was in no form whatsoever. It was that, let's see, it might have been his most recent was the 2024 BMW PGA, where he had been in form. Prior to that, it was the Corrales Punta Cana, where he missed the cut prior to that at the Valero, and really hadn't done much of anything. Only had 2 top 10s in the past 6 months or something going into that week. So we've seen him win without form. He played really well at the Zurich this year. So, it's obviously a team event, but he himself played quite well. He was 13th at the API. And so we've seen him spike a little bit. We haven't seen him spike a big amount, but we know that that's within him. He's one of the most volatile players on tour. And like I said, if you give me anybody in contention and just say, how confident are you that this guy's going to continue to play well? He's at the top of the list. So I really like that at 450 to 1.
Yeah, and it's funny because, again, people often go to the name and who Zurich is all I've seen him play good at, whatever. That's so limited. You didn't say, this is because, it's not a narrative his boy Aaron Rai won last week. Maybe he's motivated. It has nothing to do with that. It's what people so often overlook of you're betting, especially with betting, but also for DFS. He's $7,000. He's, what does DraftKings know? Why isn't he in the 6s? It's joking on that, obviously, but I'm saying, got to clarify everything these days now. Of course, I forgot, but just noting, it's not how often. It goes back to our previous, my guy Tettle says, it's not how often you're right, it's how much you win when you are right. It's how much can he come through? If he's in the mix, you're going to want to have him, because not only is he in the mix, but also he's been good when he's in the mix. It's just you're worried that he's not going to be in the mix, and so you let that deter you, and then people take it as gospel, but it's the odds are baked in. 450 you got him at, even right now 350, some other books too, whatever. It's baked in. Second of all, it's also a setup of, in DFS, it's if it's a made cut, that could be enough at 7K this week. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. 6-6 could end up really low. What if it is a lazy week and somehow, Spieth and someone else bust? And it's well, shit, now 2 of the chalkiest pieces are out, and now there's limited versions of this. And also, by the way, Billy Ho is, 3% owned or less? It's okay, well, if you have him and he ends up battering, that could be a thing. And so, little things like that people don't bake in or account for. And we saw it, by the way, at the Masters this year. Not all of them came through, but we had this conversation multiple times of Spieth, Homa, Koepka, who else? JT, all the guys that were in the mix at one point that were oh shit, that could actually be a thing. And then they ended up coming through because they just did. And that's who ended up being needed in some cases. So I think that's something to think about as well. It's not really if he does, it's or how often he does, it's if he does, what that can mean for you. And that's the contention scores are good for. So,
last thing here is just this is also very clearly not saying that Billy Horschel is going to play well. I mean, right. Horschel has a lower made cut probability than guys around him like Zach Blair, Takumi Kanaya. Those guys are at 0.3%. They're not even there. They're at 0.26% chance to win. Horschel's at 0.8%. So 3 times more likely to win, even though he's less likely to make the cut than a lot of the guys around him. And that's that's the type of player that a sportsbook is most likely to make a mistake on. And I think that's always a good way to phrase outright betting is who is a sportsbook going to get wrong? Who are they going to misprice, and why are they actually vulnerable for this player? It's are they going to get Jordan Spieth or Brooks Koepka wrong in a week like this when they know that all the attention is going to be on those guys? Of course, they're not likely to get those guys wrong. They're not going to get Scottie wrong. They are going to get someone wrong who's been playing terribly, but when he plays well, as he's shown over the last 5 years, even though he hasn't done it in the last year and a half, when he plays well, he's going to really continue to play well and actually get the job done. So whenever outright betting, I think that's just a really good way to phrase any bet is how likely are they to actually make a mistake on this player? And if the answer is not likely, then maybe you shouldn't make that bet.
Also, it's phenomenal outcome. I think it was even Circa, the guy there is amazing. Jeffrey, who was man, this is the Rye win. Amazing outcome. For those that got him, amazing for you. For those that didn't, amazing for us, because it just cuts off every other outright immediately. So it's the books don't care as much. I hit the book hard on Billy Ho. Well, only you and this small crew did. So they're doing just fine on everybody that bet cards deep of 8 to 10 guys on other golfers that aren't Billy Ho. So it's just that type of thing from a value perspective, and apply it to whatever you think is the guy. I'm just saying that's the example what you were just explaining.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like if Billy wins, they're gonna have to pay me a lot of money. They're gonna have to pay people in my Discord and over at FTN Fantasy a lot of money. They're gonna have to pay people watching the show a lot of money. But guess what? They're still gonna come out way on top because all those Scottie tickets are gonna be losers. All of those Spieth and Brooks and Siwoo tickets are gonna be losers. They'd be very, very happy to pay us a good amount of money on a Billy Ho win. Now, let's also be clear. I'm not saying like Billy Horschel's gonna go win and that you gotta go make this bet because it's gonna hit. No. It's almost certainly going to lose. He's almost certainly going to play poorly. But
I like this one. I will not crack.
He's not 450 to 1.
Also, remember this too, just a DFS perspective. But like, Billy Ho's 7K. I think immediately people are like, oh, that gets me up to Scottie. I'm fine with it. Trust me, I'm good with Scottie. I'm just saying, and he put Finau in there as added bonus. But I'm just noting, it's like that's the type of thing where you could play Scottie or you could play Billy Ho, and build like a Jordan Spieth lineup and balance it from there. And it's like I got Jordan Spieth. I got my Billy Ho play that I have conviction in because if he spikes, I know it could be good. Now let me just fill out the middle with some great plays that nobody's on, and only Spieth ends up being chalky. Everybody else is lower owned. Your construction's different. It still makes sense. It fits. Projects like 5 points, 7 points off the best, anything like that. Like you can find that. So I think that's somewhat interesting as well. All right, one and done thoughts. Anything for the one and done and who we're gonna play this week? Let's talk through that, and then we'll get to our leverage lane before we get out of here.
Yeah, I've got like no thoughts here. You don't use anyone good. Use whoever you want after that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's the most intriguing part, or the way to discuss through it is like I don't want to be using like Scottie, Spieth. See, I guess like people say like where are you saving them for? But there is still opportunities for sure. Those golfers are definitely like Spieth. If you think he's hot right now, then maybe sure. But do people really think that? I don't know. So you still have like. How many people are going to play Keith Mitchell or Davis Thompson or Pearson Coon? Like there's tons of options that you could spread it out to, that this is a good field for them. And when we talked earlier this season of guys like Thor or Rasmus Højgaard, unlike Nikolai, and you'll go to his brother for a second, or Sung Jae, if you think he's popping now, it's like that now the cognizant is long gone. It's like, is he? I still don't think so, by the way. I think he's good, but maybe not great. But if there was a spot to use these guys, these are the types of fields, because it's like, anyone who has, most aren't going Scottie, or even if they did, who cares? They're wasting a lower amount of money that you can get back later if you haven't used them on big time tournaments like the US Open, the Open, tons of like other signatures, things like that. But also, and I think Memorial's coming right up. Like, yeah, so it's like, who cares if you end up playing Thor and getting second to Scottie? It's like, that's a phenomenal outcome right there, because what else are you saving Thor for? This would be the type of field if he's got it all together where he comes through. So just keep that in mind. When you're rolling it out there. I think that's somewhat interesting. And someone said like, back to our guy, Aaron, good take now. From Aaron says, Grazerman or Springer and save Siwoo for the Wyndham. Like that was a great example though, of like the Siwoo portion to say to the other one, to each your own. You could definitely play those guys. Like Grazerman's interesting for sure. But like Siwoo, you have other spots you could use them at and feel really good about using them at those spots and let some stuff marinate and see how it goes and whatever, and still get a decent chunk out of them. So I think that's another way to look at it for one and done. For us,
yeah, I like that Grazerman call. I think this is definitely a week where you can go further down the board than you've really gone so far this year. So like Grazerman, Eckroat, you mentioned Mitchell, I think is a good play. Any of those names like really stand out to you as your favorite?
Yeah, the last one you said. I think Mitchell? It's going to be really like how can you play Keith Mitchell at 9,400 here, right? When you've got Brooks Koepka 200 more, Spieth just 400 more. Keith Mitchell's a loser. You've seen him never come through. He sucks. But then when does he do good? Of course, when he's 9,400 and the instant pivot off of any of those guys you want to talk. I think Rio will be more owned, not just in one and done DFS, but whatever. But I think more people go to Rio or drop down even further. So I think Keith Mitchell is extremely interesting because we're definitely not saving him for anything else. I know he usually pops in your stuff when you look at, Keith Mitchell, what do you call him? The Broe scores, like the
BROE, birdie rate over expectation. Yeah.
I call it the Broe. And so I like that one. So yeah, I think Seabez, somebody else mentioned, is someone interesting down there, but I like the Keith Mitchell call. I would go Keith Mitchell and take a shot, man. Like I think it's a really interesting time to do it.
I love your point about like getting second place to Scottie being a really good outcome here for one and done, because you need more than an off week event win from Scottie to do really well in one and done. And the nice thing there is like Mitchell has a really bad contention performance score. If he's competing for a win, there's a good chance that he's not going to do that well. If Scottie's 5 clear of him, he's it's clear and easy, right? It's smooth
Fire
sailing.
away.
You can just go coast to his second place finish, 4 strokes behind Scottie. You don't have to worry about that. So I like that a lot. And actually, like, it even has DFS implications. Like, you could actually have a lineup where you have Mitchell, you don't have Scottie, and you're rooting for Scottie to extend the lead because Scottie lineups don't have a chance of catching your really good balance build, and you need Keith to not be playing under pressure. So that could be a very funny outcome.
Yeah, I'm with that. So let's roll that one out here and see how it goes this week. I think it's at least somewhat interesting to roll with that. By the way, I think maybe I saw Eckroat from you as well, and we just didn't talk about it, but I do like that Eckroat call as an interesting one also. And I was just trying to see what he is this week. He's 7,500 on DraftKings, and I don't know what his betting odds are, but he's definitely out there. So yeah, I think some interesting calls there. Let's get to our leveraged lane for the week. And I know you said you weren't certain, so I'll roll here first. Kind of flipped it as I go along, but I just did like 3 builds here while we were talking, and all of them involved 2 8K guys. So I'm definitely going to be, I'll say it a couple different ways. One, at least 2 8K guys in my $200 single entry, because I found multiple builds that I feel good about. And I'm gonna have to do my 200, 200, 100 trick here because I'm feeling pretty good about that. And also, I don't know, because like obviously ownerships will change slightly, but I'll just say this: none of them had Hoey, Jaeger, Smith, McGreevy, Gim, none of these builds. I'm not saying not to play them this week in my portfolio. Will definitely have them, especially in Scottie builds and things like that. But I could see none of those guys being in the lineup as well as a way to finish it out. So just that gives a few different ways you could build it. But I'm definitely going to stick to 2 8K guys of your choice. I got a couple here I've landed on, and even one lineup has 3 of them. So yeah, I got a couple different versions that way. What's yours?
That gave me a good idea. I honestly didn't have a good answer, and I'm going to make my leverage lane fading both Siwoo Kim and Jordan Spieth. And basically,
no.
Sorry?
Is that leaving yourself the out for Scottie, or is that saying I'm actually going to be out on all 3 because the Scottie lineups are tricky?
Well, you know what? I'm almost certainly not playing Scottie, so you can add that there. But I'm almost saying like this is leverage lane, and I'm basically saying not playing Scottie doesn't give you leverage, because part of the reason why I'm saying Siwoo and no Spieth and no Siwoo is my leverage lane is because I'm so much lower than the field on Scottie's ownership that ownership has to go somewhere. And I think it's mostly going to Siwoo and Spieth. So I think people are going to be surprised by how low Scottie is, and they're going to be surprised by how high Siwoo and Spieth are. And I'm essentially saying, therefore, I don't want those guys. So yeah, you can toss Scottie in there as well, because I'm almost certainly not playing him. But it felt weird to include him in the leverage lane.
For sure. But fade top 3 on the board is pretty highly aggressive leverage lane if it was going that far. But I thought you might just leave the out in case. But it's pretty tricky, like you said, to build a good version of that. Obviously, you'll have a 3 max this week, so there is an opportunity for it. But typically, talking about like your main build, you've always done a good job of sort of breaking it down that way. So I was just curious. But yeah, big move to fade those guys. But I think that's where people will say, "Oh, must be going all balanced guys," and it's like not necessarily. There's like a ton of different builds you can go to from that fade those 2 version.
If I will say this, if I do play Scottie, max 1 of 3 lineups, I definitely prefer the balanced build this week. So there are 2 reasons why I like this as leverage lane. The first one I just kind of touched on already. Like, I think they're going to be more popular than what people are expecting for them both. The second reason is, yeah, they do project quite well. They are 2nd and 3rd in our expected strokes gained and in our expected win odds and top 5 odds and top 10 odds. But there just isn't a whole lot of separation between them and a lot of the guys below them. And a lot of the guys below them are significantly lower owned and quite a bit cheaper. So it just seems to me like those 2 are very clearly heavily overowned. And that's why it's my leverage lane. So I like the fact that, we talked through this and actually you gave me the inspiration for the leverage lane in yours. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have gone with, because I feel very strongly this week that like my convictions are who not to play and not who to play. And so I think my 3 lineups are going to be very different from one another. I don't expect this to be one of those weeks where I play 3 entry like a single entry.
Yeah. Remember, the takeaway from today, folks, is if you're playing just one lineup or single entry, sometimes you can 3 evaluate your process and do it by going just to a 3 max. We're not saying like so many people say, "Oh, I'm going to try MME this week." And I posted articles about this as well, where someone's like, "Oh, it's a good structure in the $5 this week. I got to go jam 150 lineups." Well, how many do you usually play? Yeah, usually I focus on one lineup, but I think this week I'm just going to play 150. Like what? It's like, it makes no sense. It's right. It's a golfer that's horrible at golf that usually plays from these tees. It's like, today I think I'm going to play from the tips. Going to play like a pro. Really? What's your handicap? How do you shoot? I'm terrible, man. Like, you're probably hitting houses. Oh, probably not a good idea to just flip that switch. It's not in your bag. So always something to think about with DFS and with anything you're doing out there. But Alex, a lot of fun as usual. Let the people know where they can find you. What else you got going on this week?
At Alex Blickle 1 on Twitter. Check out the Discord. Promo code Leverage Lane gets you 10% off forever. So go check that out. And yeah, lots of really cool research that I'm dropping in this week too about like PGA roster constructions. You've alluded to the stuff I've done in the last few months about MLB stuff and trying out that stuff in PGA as well now.
Yeah, this thing doesn't want to cooperate. Sorry. So just a note, just like I said, if you guys want to check out Alex's Discord, definitely I'm over in there. I'm always picking up on new things as we go along and learning. It's a lot of fun that way. If you want to check out Ship It Nation, the best deal, there's no code required, nothing. Just go to shipitnation.com, click the banner at the top. It's $10 less, just $49, so less than $2 a day to get an entire month, which will take you right up to the US Open. All the other events got the Memorial, Charles Schwab coming up next week, then the Memorial. There's more after that. So get in. That $49 is all access, including the optimizer with SaberSim. It's got the Stone 2.0. You can hand build right off of that. It's got the spike report for Showdown. It's got all that. And then, of course, every other sport that's going on right now included. So, Alex, this is a fun one, man, going back through all of this stuff with you. And I think this is a fun week that we can take advantage of. Clearly, we've kind of got to the point now where people recognize what a lazy week can look like. And I think my guy Stat said it best, is like how lazy. Listen, the field is bad, but also to his point, 100 plus guys are projecting below 5%, and it could be higher. Like, we'll have to see. Like, some of the stuff is just going to be very congregated on not only certain players, but certain build styles. And those are the weeks you want to take advantage of. So yeah, definitely check us out. If you guys want to go to Ship It Nation, want to check out Alex's stuff, that's great as well. For Alex, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, good luck this week, and let's ship it.